my grandmother told me, and I always hold on to that, like, don't get those credit cards because that way, if you do that, you'll never have money. So basically, she was saying is like you right now are selling your
To be
future.
the next thing or whatever, but we live in a capitalist society, right? And if you are not producing a good or service that benefits the needs of the market, they
Mm-hmm.
don't care about your damn degree in anthropology.
So this is day 5. Debt doesn't have to be a part of your life. So my thinking on this was, and I think I definitely mentioned it in there. It's basically the excessive and the unnecessary things. If it's beyond your house, beyond your car, then to me that is somewhat excessive and unnecessary. But even in having your house and in having your car, you can get excessive with that. Because if you're spending all your money on your house, then you're basically house poor, right? Your
Right.
money is going to your house, or if all your money is going to your car, then you're basically car poor, right? So get something to me, get things where you can be comfortable. Like I said, I bought this house, 4 bedrooms, 3 full bathrooms. But I knew that even what I was gonna pay here was still less than the market in renting. And then since the pandemic happened and all those things happened, rents increased even more, whereas my mortgage has stayed the same.
Right.
Even throughout that time. And actually, I got it reduced because the interest rates was lower during the pandemic time. The interest rates were really low. So I'm like, why would I sit here on a higher
Right.
interest rate? I
Right.
can reduce that
Right.
and could pay it off, earlier if I decide to go that route. So I feel like those are the key things. Is like, don't be excessive. Like, have something, or like even when I said, about like not putting all your money into your investments, but having some for an emergency. Even with your house, with your car, you don't have to go to the max. Yeah, they're gonna try to put you at the max, but you can say, well, I'm comfortable paying this much. How much mortgage can I get for the amount that I'm willing to pay?
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, it's like it's the thing where people think that having a credit card is extra money. That's not extra money.
You know.
Taking out them little loans and payday loans.
Yeah.
That's not
Yeah.
extra money. And
Exactly.
basically, once you pay them little payday loans back, it's almost doubled in price, if not more,
Mm-hmm.
in price. Well, so that's what I'm saying. Like debt doesn't have to be a part of your life. Like right now, I think only things I have is my house and my car, really. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, cell phone, because that's just what.
Well, see, okay, so I'm glad you went there because I think I
Hmm.
know where you're going.
Hmm.
I hope you're going there because if you're not, I'm gonna grab you by the hand and I'm gonna take you there. Okay. So when I first read this day or this
Hmm.
chapter, so to
Hmm.
speak, of the book, I had to get what a true definition of debt.
Hmm.
Because when you talk to different people, they have different definitions or
Hmm.
descriptions of what debt means, not what it means from a Britannica, what is it, Oxford Dictionary
Right.
one, but what it means to them,
To them.
right? And they will try to explain and justify it. So I said,
Hmm.
okay, before I go read anything in here, let me just see what is the true definition of debt, just vanilla, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And there are actually two definitions if you think of it, okay? One is personal and one is financial, right? So the first definition I wrote down, debt, something, usually money, that is owed or due to another party.
Hmm.
Simple, right? So in that case, then, usually money, but it could be paying a debt to society. Hey, you rob somebody, you go to jail, you've paid your debt.
Hmm.
Hey, I borrowed a cup of sugar from my neighbor. They came back. I repaid the debt by giving them a cup of flour,
Hmm.
right? Harmless. Okay. But then from a financial standpoint, going along the lines of what you were just touching on,
Hmm.
debt, a financial liability or obligation that is owed to another party.
Hmm.
See, two definitions. Most people see it as the first. They're not looking at it as a true financial liability or
Liability.
obligation. And that's where we get in trouble,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because that word obligate, usually for me, when I hear obligate, that
Mm-hmm.
means almost like slave type stuff, right?
Yeah.
I'm obligated to pay it.
Yeah.
And what do we do when we hear the word obligate? We pull back and reject. So when
Mm-hmm.
it's time to pay that bill that we're obligated to pay on time, you talked about this in previous episodes. What do? We put it off.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why. Maybe it's a human condition, right?
Right.
But I wanted to make sure that debt defined, it has two definitions in terms of how it's applied in our day-to-day,
Mm-hmm.
day-to-day lives
Mm-hmm.
on that point.
Excellent points once again.
I'm not doing this on purpose, right? No.
Excellent points once
Yeah,
again. Um, I love that you pointed out the word obligation, obligation, because even scripture says, that the borrower is slave to the lender. That's what it says.
yeah,
You know?
yeah,
So I don't look at debt as being an evil thing. I want to clear that up because once
right.
again, in this country, we usually borrow to buy houses. We usually borrow
Mm-hmm,
to buy cars. That has become the norm. It has
mm-hmm,
become the norm,
mm-hmm,
or it has become a common thing. And it doesn't have to be the norm. If we could put off that need, that desire for instant gratification, then
right,
we could work towards saving. I remember when people used to save money to buy a car. I remember
right,
that kind of stuff. Hearing
right,
people say things like that. Or even saving money, even for a down payment on a house. Whereas now, like people kind of try to finance things and borrow this from that one, and then you got to go to that older generation who has saved money and needed that safety net to maybe get a gift for your down payment. Whereas these younger generations are more now willing to borrow, willing to go into debt. You know,
mm-hmm,
my grandmother told me, and I always hold on to that, like don't get those credit cards because that way, if you do that, you'll never have money. So basically, she was saying is like you right now are selling your future in
even with the
the present.
rewards.
No, I'm saying like that's what she told me, but
I'm
so
joking.
so I got what she was saying in that
Yeah,
moment, and it always makes me think. It always makes me think. But we talked about it. Like
right,
I
right,
pay them credit cards. I use them.
right,
Yesterday was the first.
right,
Yesterday
right,
was the first. I sat down, paid all my bills. Tomorrow morning on the third, when I get up, that credit card will be
right.
paid in full.
So I got a question for you,
Mhm,
and this will be sort of a point of clarification that
mhm.
you can give. So on page 18,
Okay.
and embedded in the middle of that paragraph, and I highlighted it, okay,
Mhm,
you write, excessive and unnecessary debt is a problem. I
mhm.
think that speaks for itself.
It really does.
Okay, now in the going forward section, the very first sentence,
Mhm,
this is what I want you to clarify with respect to the previous statement.
mhm.
Debt is common, but it's not normal. Make that make sense.
All right. So as I even because I think I even alluded to it a little while ago when I was talking.
Mm-hmm,
It's even like what I referred to further in the book too, like pain in your body. It may be common, but it's not normal. You can think back. Most of us can think back to a time when we didn't have any pain. We didn't
mm-hmm,
creak every time we moved, right? You used to be
mm-hmm,
a football player, and you can
mm-hmm,
go out there and play and get up the next day and do what you're supposed to be doing. But now
mm-hmm.
you kind of feel that in your body a little bit, right?
Right.
So it's become more a part of who you are now. But it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to
Mm-hmm.
be. So I just look at debt being that same thing. Even our country, like how
Right.
you mentioned you buy those US debts or they go into debt buying, using your money
Right.
for whatever they need to use it for. So once
Right.
again, it's sort of like that mentality has gotten to me pushed down onto the people. And so it keeps you in that bondage or like that slave-like mentality
Mm-hmm.
because the borrower is slave to the lender. So you're
Mm-hmm.
always owing somebody else. Once again, it's like you sold your future. And a lot of people today are okay with it. Like you have no idea about that. Like you mentioned that obligation to
Right,
repay that. So
right,
that's what I meant by it's common, but it's not normal. The norm is me probably saving up the money, living within my means, buying the things that I can buy, not trying to keep up with the Joneses, but doing the best that I can possibly do for myself. And part of
hmm,
that too is saving, investing, and doing the things I need to do, building a future for myself and my family, and then
right,
passing it on to the next generation. Those
right,
are the things that should be normal.
right. See, I see debt.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with everything you said. Uncontrolled debt is crazy. Um, how do I put this? See, I'm trying to make sure I say it right. Your circumstances are going to shape how you view
Mm-hmm.
and manage debt. All right. Now, I'm not going to talk about how much money I make, but I do okay. Right. I don't view debt the same way because my debt is manageable based on my income.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm low income, right, and I have debt, it changes my perspective about how I handle that liability or obligation.
Mm-hmm.
So I made a note because I had to think about this, right? Because you got rich dad, poor dad, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Robert Kiyosaki, I'm stealing your little spot here for a second. Poor dad thinks a little bit differently about debt than
Mm-hmm.
rich dad,
Mm-hmm.
right? So when I read this chapter, I had to think about, okay, how did I view debt when I wasn't high income?
Mm-hmm.
And everything you wrote in this chapter about the liability, obligation, stress that comes with it, right? All of the bad things,
Mm-hmm.
connotations that come with it, that was low income Phil with debt.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But once I started accumulating assets, higher income, I started viewing debt as, God, I don't even want to say it's an asset, but it wasn't as much of a liability. Let me
Mm-hmm.
say, I'd
Mm-hmm.
never say debt is not is an asset.
So you
I'd have
you
to say
leverage, you
right.
leverage. That's what you did. Yeah.
That was just what I was going to say. Because I even made that point that you have good debt versus bad debt,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to know the difference between the two, right? And you have to be able to leverage the debt towards, how do I say, not just paying it off, but leveraging it to accumulate wealth somewhere else,
Mm-hmm.
right? So what I put is, what did I write? Let me make sure I read my little chicken scratch here. All right. Debt can also be leveraged towards an investment in another vehicle,
Mm-hmm.
right? Business, education, real estate. And I think we talked about this in one of the previous
Mm-hmm.
episodes, right? And other things that will help increase value over time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, in essence, your good debt is things that will appreciate for the most part, right? Bad debt are things that's going to depreciate. You mentioned the car. As soon as you take it off the lot, it costs 30,000. Take it off the lot, you lose 5,000. It's a
Mm-hmm.
depreciating debt. However, on that's how you look at it as someone who doesn't have high income.
Mm-hmm.
But for someone who has high income, they look at the car as an appreciating asset, not so much because of what the value of the car is, but what the vehicle provides for you. It
Mm-hmm.
allows you to go to these business meetings and these other
Mm-hmm.
opportunities to sell your goods or your services. Maybe it's a tax deduction,
Mm-hmm.
but the everyday common guy just using it just for day-to-day stuff, and it's not giving them any value
Mm-hmm.
other than just a means of transportation. So
Right.
that's what I'm saying. Like when we look at debt, we look at it from two different
Mm-hmm.
spectrums of the two different ends of the spectrum as low, moderate income to
Mm-hmm.
high income. And they're going to look at debt differently. Even